Welcome, Nickey.
Hello.
You're on a TV show. I'm joking. I'm joking. So this is Ocean to Ocean, my podcast with people talking about nothing and everything for Nothing Media. I'm Art Pinsof, and I'm talking to Nickey. Um, yeah, yeah, Nickey Beauperard. How do you?
Oh, well, no, it's all right. Nickey,
Okay, okay. Well, yeah. So we were just talking about I guess my broken heart and people being uh I like what you said a few minutes ago about just be yourself.
yeah,
What and so in the
not, then then people will say this like this. It's like, well, who else you gonna be?
Mhm.
Who else you gonna be? So you be yourself. And every moment that you're sad and happy and mad and heartbroken, and you're yourself. Who else are you? But is that true? Is it really true? True? You really yourself. It's really relaxing just to say, okay, this is it. This is it. This is myself.
Yeah.
Even that word becomes very scary in those non-duality world of self. Oh, is it She's S self, little self, a big self, with the self. Okay, it gets very complicated. It's not.
Yeah, which self are we talking about here, Nick?
It's like stop. Don't start a self
Yeah.
talk.
Which how big is the letter S in this? So yeah, which
Yeah.
font are we using here?
Well, I don't know, but yeah, and that's why with the maybe I like the whole idea like of the childhood innocence and all that, because you can tell when people aren't trying to be a self because they're anxious mostly because they don't want to interrupt the conversation, or they don't feel like they have something as interesting to say, or like just trying to fit in mostly. People just trying to fit in, right? So it's like, oh, I'll just try to put my best foot forward as my best self for that situation, all that. But when you when I had my concussion and then my I have to say, it's like I'm underwater and the thoughts fell out of my head. It's like the thoughts fell out. And they talk about this in the concussion. They say, oh, about the lack of focus, the lack of, like I was saying to you, our spatial awareness, the seeing part. And then a lot of people that have concussion say they don't feel like themselves. So it's really been fascinating to have a concussion. It's like it truly, their eyes see everything. And because the thoughts are just bubbling away, floating and bubbling and being there, but you can't, because your focus isn't there, you can't grasp any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really neat. It's like all the words they're saying in the concussion clinic are be back to the self you were.
Whoa. Really?
Well, they're trying to help you. They're saying, okay, go back to the self you were, so you don't have this open spatial non-boundary. Try and focus on something so you can bring your
Right. Right.
back in. start listening to the stories of the thoughts so that you can start to focus on the jobs you require to do.
Right. Yeah.
And then the slower movement, go back to the speed that you were working at before.
Mhm.
Um, do life better. Yeah, it's really neat. It's really, really fascinating and really, really neat. And I'm really curious about how it's all spoken about because this is a very natural way to live in itself as yourself as is moving. There's no reason to to be what else.
Right.
But are most people themselves?
I guess, are you asking, are there these layers of psychological like protection as far as like putting on a mask because to try to accomplish something and as opposed to just being without with vulnerability?
Mm. I love that word, art. I love that word. I think that word brings a little bit of fear. It's like, oh, I'm vulnerable, you know, and um, and then people will come and get me if I'm vulnerable. Everybody come and take my money and then take my food. Like, I don't know what the vulnerable feeling is, but it's like the way it's been expressed in the word. I think most people's energy would be like, you know, going to the market naked, you know,
Yeah.
put my clothes on. But yeah, so the vulnerability isn't vulnerable though. The uh, situation is that everything's so fresh that's vulnerable. It's that because everything's fresh, you don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when the cloud's going to go past the sun and it's going to get cloudy or like, I don't know, right? So everything is unknown in that's the vulnerability of being. And there can be like sort of an excitement about that because then when there's no acceptance of or rejection of what the outside expression might be on the behavior of this person. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
there can still be, if someone's like really mean to me or cross with me or hurt me, I'm still would be like, ouch, ooh, you know? So that whole, well, the suffering ends and the misery is like, yeah, well, I feel I might have a cry now about it. That's, like, come on, we're all.
I yeah, I mean, and if I use some other teacher's language or speaker's language, I do like the phrase full on, that this is full on. I like I like the way of expressing this as there's no longer a filter. They did the for the emotions in a sense or the reaction, and yet but there's no longer a strong attachment to story or less and less of that. So you could have a cry, you could feel heartbroken or angry, but then it can go away more quickly as well. There's less invested in the story.
Yes, because it does keep moving. The story keeps moving. Then the phone rings, and the next part of the
Yeah.
story comes up, and the next part of the
Yeah,
story comes.
the story just will happen on its own regardless. But like in the past, like there were certain plot elements in the story that I had to make sure were there in the picture for 10 years straight. Every day I had to have this as part of the story, this sadness or anger or, the whatever happened to me when I was 5 or 20 or 15 or whatever I did in those years. That was something I had to remember every single day and everything related to it.
Mm.
Now I don't even remember anything unless something causes me to remember it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
you see a photo or this, or maybe a similar thing happens, and then that same emotion triggers. That's all
that
psychology and all that. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
I think a lot of it is the one to not have that. Well, that happens.
Right.
So
That
that
happens.
like it happens, and you don't
Yeah.
have to be sad about it, and you can be a, you're allowed to be whatever yourself is doing at the time. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. If you feel bullied, then you're feeling bullied. You don't have to not feel bullied. You feel bullied. That's it. And that's how it feels. And maybe you're gonna stand up for yourself this time, or maybe you're just gonna go. "Ooh." Maybe you're gonna, And I think the whole idea of this, we were talking about the not doing, not doer doing. It's like that's a lot of strange talking sometimes like that, because you're very much doing what, who isn't doing? I'm doing, you're doing, everyone's doing. We don't have to go so far with it. It makes it complicated and wordy, very wordy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned to you this idea that I've been playing with of a masculine versus a feminine expression of this, maybe. And maybe to the masculine energy, there's more of a revelation in not doing. Maybe there's more of a narcissistic attachment to doing and being something. And the feminine might be more comfortable in a space of openness and not labeling everything. And from that perspective, the opposite might be true, that actually embracing and everything you're saying right now and just saying, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening. I don't have to say it's not happening or there's no one it's happening to. Like there's actually more of a freedom in the this is non-duality appearing as this. And you don't have to call it non-duality, but it's just this is what's appearing and acknowledging it. There could be somehow more freedom in that to someone who could be more on the feminine or even pathologically the codependent side of the spectrum that I'm playing with here.
Hmm.
And codependent in the sense of like the spiritual seeker that needs to hear the message in someone else's language, and they feel like they have to get what that person means. They like whatever that person's experiencing when they say there is no self, like I need to know what that is, as opposed to what's happening here. This is what's happening, here. And why is that any less valid? It isn't, because this is all coming from, you could say, formlessness arising as form, or wholeness, or appearing as Nickey and Art having a conversation. And that's what's happening. And it doesn't need to be seen that anyone else's way of putting it is, you don't even need to care what they're saying, but they're pointing you back to you. Ramana Maharshi was a big part of my, journey of all of this. And really all he ever said to most people was just to ask themselves, who is this happening to? Who's the one asking me a question right now? And that was all he would tell people most of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He didn't need too many words. Yeah, I have some of his I have talks with Ramana on my bookshelf here as well. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's all of the books and stuff that came by. Nobody's reading the passages that you read that you didn't read. Okay, I'm going to talk like that. Try to talk like that. It seems like, because I wouldn't want to say otherwise. Let's just go back to talking about what I'm getting at the market. Okay, so that you know, when it's red that isn't red, and it's sort of like it's like, oh, that's so oh, you know, in so many ways, in so many ways. But yeah, I think there is maybe man talk. You know, there is sometimes it's not so much man talk. Maybe it is masculine. Maybe you're right. But it's just that a character body talking, and then that character body talking, and whether it's, you know, blonde and blue-eyed, or this, or man or woman, or little or short, or you know, it's just like mostly it's just like you're just hearing sounds from another thing. But I'd say, if you think about it, there's more like words like the Tony Parsons and Jim Newman and I hear more of those uh, speakers than I do female speakers a lot, which you know, yeah. The ones I came around to a little while that been speaking a while is Lisa Cairns and Lisa Lennon.
Yeah.
And I like Ella too. She's such fun. As far as female ones, I'm trying to think of. I can't think of too many, but yeah, it's lovely. It's all very lovely. Like we were saying, there's not that many people that are on in the club.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is
the
all
normal thing. It's like when I go to the bug, it's just gonna be the characters there. Like it's not
yeah,
like it's just a discussion about, you know, loveliness.
yeah, yeah, and I would say that I get the feminine aspect as well from Tony and Jim. Even I think every human has a balance of these two energies, and none of these words quite work. You know, to say narcissistic to codependent, that those are like awful psychological words that nobody wants to be labeled with, really.
Yeah.
But they point to something that feels important to me. But then masculine, feminine, same thing. It's a little too limiting and
Yeah.
weird. It just opens things up to sexism and weird things that I don't like. And then I could say, well, it's yin and yang energy, but then that feels a little too impersonal. So there's no words. That's why it's floating around in my brain. It's babbling out of my mouth, and I'm just sharing what's happening here. You know?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's when you can really, I can really feel your art of just being yourself. You're not trying to be correct in this and that. There's no correct in this and that. It's just having a conversation. A thought came up and you kind of explored it. So you are. Yeah, I remember Emerson and I were talking one day, and it's like, you know, that whole idea of just stop second guessing everything that you did and didn't do. Like, just stop second guessing it. Like,
right.
the only part that goes ooh afterwards is, you know, it does the deed, and then it's like, ooh, don't know what you did that for, and it's like, you told me to, like, and now I did. Now I'm not supposed to have done it. Like, it's all this game that plays out with human beings, right? It's like.
I had this glimpse at one point where it was like, and also I don't feel totally comfortable saying when was the glimpse, when was the shift, was there a shift? I don't necessarily buy into any of that, but I did have this moment that was very beautiful where what was it? It was something about, it was an old friend that I'd just gotten back in touch with. And I sent him a couple texts. It was just, we had a conversation on the phone, and then I sent him a text of a couple of songs I thought he would like.
Nice.
And then for some reason afterwards, I thought, oh wait, I sent him that song when I should have sent him another song instead. That would have been a better one to send him. But then I thought, but if I send him another one now, it's going to be too much. and then I thought, well, and then all of a sudden this thing rushed back to me of like this memory of this friend of mine who was a very close friend who died of heroin overdose. And and I could see his whole life and our friendship as being strewn with drama and problems, but also this deep love and friendship there. And he was a musician, and I produced an album he recorded, and we just had like 9, 10 years of beautiful friendship, but also always with him saying and doing things that were a little hurtful for me or triggering or whatever. And but then when I look at it, I think, yeah, but he was perfect. It was perfect, just expression of what he was. Like, it wouldn't have been better if he, I mean, I would prefer for him to have not been on heroin and to be alive, but his life was a perfect expression of what it was. And then somehow I had this very deep knowing of this text that I sent my friend, even though the song felt like not the right song, and he wasn't going to like it as much as another one I could have sent, or I thought I could have sent, you know. But like, but it was like, but there's a beauty in the imperfection. It's like, it's human because we're mammals. It's like we have these mental circuits probably designed, if I had to speculate, to avoid, you know, getting killed, you know, in the wild. You know, this is evolution to find the best solution to solve a problem, because that could be life or death. You go to the wrong bush, you get eaten by the lion. So, you know, like, but at the same time, there's just a beauty to what is, because it can't be any other way. And just, to me, the vulnerability and the authenticity is what you're saying, Nickey. It's like, who needs this self-doubt? This is already just perfectly imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like what would you change about that plant next to you? You know, does it need an extra leaf or branch? You know?
It's artificial.
Yeah.
It just needs a little dusting, actually, probably. Thanks, Art. Like, yeah, that's helpful.
That's a lovely green color. Yeah.
I know, it works. Yeah. Well, Art.
What
This is it.
This is it?
This is it.
Yeah, where do you go?
I know.
And that's the fun. You don't know.
You don't know.
So there's always a surprise.
You don't know. But you know what, though? I think, like we were talking about the word vulnerable, I think for most people, vulnerable is very scary. You know, if I went out my door and it was like, you know, going down a rabbit hole, and every time you open the door, it was like Alice in Wonderland. If it was always like something different, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. We're gonna get my little bag and walk to the market. Yeah, it's very sim. There's. I can't. I can't. Just can't.
Yeah. No, I said something similar yesterday in the Rainbows. Nancy and Michael have a daily meeting I go to sometimes, and sometimes I just want to say something in there, because Michael and Nancy, they both can just go talk for hours beautifully about this. But then I want to say something, but then I spoke up and said something, and it just came out as nothing. Just it's but yeah.
Well said. Well not said.
Yes.
Well not said.
A one-handed clap.
Yes. Knitting with one needle.
I'm telling you, Nickey, since I hurt my hand, it's really interesting to see the things that are challenging with one hand. Like
Mm.
using a can opener with one hand is one of the more challenging activities.
Yeah, yeah. One of my sister-in-law broke her arm, and she was doing a little video of and doing all the things that you have to do with one hand, you know. It's so sweet. It was really sweet. But yeah, no, we're adaptable. Very adaptable.
Yeah, I feel like this metaphor teacher of mine for years was this pug, this dog, this pug that my mom and brother had. I think it was my mom's pug. Yeah, his name was Prince. And in my mom's backyard, there was a fence and there were coyotes out there outside of the fence. And somehow, the prince, like he reached one of his paws out and got it bitten off by the coyote. He lost one of his legs. And they brought him to the vet, and he was in pain, but then basically, yeah, so he was missing one of his front two legs, but a day or two, and he was very, hurt and sad, but then 2 or 3 days later, he was the same dog. He wasn't thinking about the lost leg. He was just walking without it. He was just walking around with 3 legs instead of 4. And it was, it had more of an effect on the body, and it might have cost him a year of his body's life, but there was no thought of any of this. This is actually all story that I'm putting on it as a human. Like, oh, poor dog, it lost a leg and a year of its life, maybe. But it was just happy, wagging its tail, eating food, running around, and
just dogging around.
hugging around. Yeah.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Hmm.
And in a way, I think that speaks to the vulnerability that people are afraid of, is that maybe they're okay just the way they are.
Yes. What is it about the self that you don't think is okay, that you have needs, that requires, what do my report cards say at the end? Room for improvement. Room for improvement. How many of us think that we have definitely some room for improvement there? It's like, well, yeah, well, that's a bit hard on yourself, You don't have to, there's no room for improvement. This is it. No, it could be better. I could definitely be better. I could be better at it, cleverer at it. That's why this whole concussion thing, oh my goodness, because you just don't have any focus, that people are trying to retrain you to have focus, which when the thoughts are knocked out because you can't remember anything, is delightful. It's just delightful.
Wow. Yeah.
Every word then doesn't have to have a memory story attachment to it. It's like I say this, and then your mind is thinking about something that you could attach to it from your memory mind. And then I have to connect to that memory mind to have a conversation about that memory thought mind. And then it's just very lovely to have a little conversation about it. And then the conversation finishes about it, and then that's it.
It's remarkable, Nickey. It's funny because some of the people watching or listening to this, they may have heard this recent conversation between Sam Harris and Jim Newman. And it was an interesting conversation, one that I was personally excited about. But one thing that they say at one point that Sam Harris says to Jim, he says, well, we have to say that this isn't something just a hit in the head would give you this shift. And yet, and Jim says, oh yeah, probably not. And then it's hilarious because this past week, you're the second person I've spoken to who's had a head injury that has somehow, apparently led to this change of perspective.
No, I think I had the same perspective. If the word you're using for this is perspective, um, it's just curious that I had a concussion, and then the way the concussion people talk about how you have to be another self that fits into everybody else's world of self.
I see. Well, okay. Just so I'm clear, were you involved with not an interest in non-duality or anything like that prior to the concussion?
Oh, so like a long, 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 long time ago, I was going around and I was asking everybody, and I don't know why I was doing it, but at the time, but I was just doing that. And I remember I kept saying to people, "What's the thought?"
Right?
You know, so
Yeah.
there's just sort of a fascination of what people would describe as, and I think from there, as soon as you start sort of a thought has a thought, and that thought comes up, and then maybe what happens is the mind starts to explore it to see if it's true, you know. So this is always the thought of that thought started the thought a long, long time ago. So then I had a concussion, and then I was listening to the concussion people talking about how they get people with traumatic brain injuries, what a concussion is, to get back to where they are. Like I can't. So I'm like broken. Apparently, it's like you can't. I can't not seeing, see. I can't not see. They want my eyes to go a different way, and I can't make my eyes not to try and focus. What they want you to do is they want you to focus on something, and they want you to say, look at the edges of it and say, this is a computer. It's a computer, and it's this shape, and it's right in front of me. So more mind labeling and stuff. So it's just curious. It's just a curious thing. It's just I've never been to a concussion clinic before, and I'm just really curious that they're teaching me how to be a identified person.
And there's an awareness that that's what is happening, that
Yeah.
you're being exactly. And so that it's interesting because that's the two sides of the coin. The paradox is that you see that you're an identified person, whilst in seeing that, you see that you're not, that you see that you're the seeing, which can't really be put into words. Like I saw this amazing movie. I really highly recommend to everyone watching this, called In and of Itself. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie that just came out. It's on Hulu. But
I don't have Hulu. I don't think I have Hulu.
You could get a trial membership to watch it if you felt so inclined. But basically, there was this one moment in it, because I wouldn't want to spoil anything about this movie. It's so unique and beautiful. And
what's it called again?
It's called In and of Itself. I'll message it to you afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. But it's it's part magic show, part storytelling that's in a way I've never seen before. It's real, and it's very human and beautiful. But there's this one moment where they're talking about this old saying, which I'm not sure if I'd heard before, where it's like during the sunset, throughout history or some culture, they referred to it as the hour between the hour of the wolf and the dog, or in between wolf and dog, where it was sort of a cautionary thing the parents would tell their children to come home by the time the sun goes down, the hour of wolf and dog, because at that hour, if you look into the horizon where the sun is, you won't be able to see whether it's a wolf or a dog. You won't be able to, and so come home to where it's safe. And then the host of this movie, I don't even know what to call this movie, but he's the main person in the movie. He says, if you look into the light of that's blinding you from seeing whether it's a wolf or dog, that's what it feels like. I felt like it's such a beautiful metaphor for what you're describing. And if you look away from the light, then the light illuminates everything, and you see, oh, that's Nickey, that's this story, they're trying to help me identify with myself again, and all these things, they're trying to help me heal from this concussion, or I'm having a conversation. It's like we look away from the source of this awareness and we see everything. But if we look into the awareness, which may or may not be possible even, but I know Rupert Spira, he calls it awareness of awareness. And that's something that's never resonated for me until yesterday, when a friend sent me some Rupert video of him debating somebody in a very intellectual way that was kind of a disaster, really, where it was, I heard that even Rupert had sort of regretted doing this debate with this, but because it was just a intellectual mess. It was a 7 or 8 year old video from the SAND conference with some Sufi type teacher. It was an interesting conversation, but very intellectual, and it was just debating what the word awareness meant and how could you be aware of not being aware. It's just, but I could feel it. So there was something I could feel when Rupert said awareness of awareness, and I think that's what it comes down to, is what do we feel in our body? What do you feel right now that resonates or doesn't resonate? And if what I'm saying sounds like utter nonsense, that's totally okay. And if what I'm saying stimulates things in you, then that's okay. It's like whatever's happening. It's like you said with the bully. It's like if bullying is happening, you could, run away. You could feel sad. You could stand up to the bully and, be angry or set a boundary with the bully. Any of this can happen and it's all okay. It's...
Yeah. Yeah, you're not in charge of all of it. You're not the CEO of it all. You do not need to be busy with it. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, it is. Yes.
Well, let me ask you this, Nickey. When I talk about this, like looking into the source of the awareness, that sun where you can't tell if it's a wolf or a dog, or looking away and seeing the separation and the story, do you personally feel like a tension between those two, or a conflict or a confusion around those two apparent opposites?
I don't really know what you're talking about.
Duality and non-duality. Is there a difference?
Yeah, see, that doesn't
mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything to me.
Cool. Great. Yeah, because I'll just touch on this a moment more before we just go on to whatever happens. But I mean, because I guess this is something that has meant something to me, I guess, or I think it has. I don't know. It's something I like to talk about sometimes. But it's like there's the old Zen saying of first there's mountains, then there's no mountains, nothing for no one, etc. Then there's mountains again. And somehow those two apparent opposites of no mountains and mountains again, it's what Nancy Nethercutt calls the fullness rushing back in after the, apparent separation is seen to be non-existent. And, and this has been said many different ways by different people, I feel like, but does that stir anything up, or does that bring anything to mind you'd like
What do you say?
I think I just think it's all beautiful. I mean, but I don't really want to just, I like to talk to people and see what, okay, well, I'll just go for a moment into what I feel about it. I feel, I feel the tension between those two. It's like it's like the tension of being in love with a man and woman, or a man and man, or woman and woman, or whatever. But it's that energy of like, it's the two energies of yin and yang, like dancing, and that's where the beauty feels alive in me. It's the passion, it's the it's the expression. Because if you stay entirely in either of those, then there's nothing to say or do, really, which is also okay. See, I can't touch it, Nickey. I mean, as I try to talk about it, I just feel like I'm saying nonsense, and not even, I'm not, and that's not false humility. I think what I literally just said was total nonsense. But I'm okay that I said it, because this, my brain, my body, this is it doing what it does. And I know I'm in good company here of you and all of the people, or whoever might be finding this on the internet. You know, because I'm sure everyone encounters this constant, like, oh yeah, like this passion to say something, and then like, oh yeah, but that's not really quite it, is it? And like, but then it's still like there's a joy in that. It's like falling in love. It's like you fall in love with somebody and you're like, oh, this is so amazing, this is it. And then maybe a month or a year later, you're like, oh, what was I thinking? That was, you know. But it's like, it's never it, and yet it's always it. So, and this beauty, whatever's arising right now, that's worth expressing and exploring as much as anything. That's what I'd say.
Lovely. That's lovely. It's so much more simple. Just if the mouth opens and it says something, to not go after it afterwards. You know, don't be a bully to yourself. You know, it's like, that's not, you know. I mean, I know that sounds like psychology and talk nicely, positive. They keep telling me positive thoughts, Nickey, positive thoughts. Ha 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 ha. What? You know? How am I gonna fake my way out of this?
You've got to experience whatever's happening and acknowledge it, express it.
Yeah, I seem to, because I'm so curious about it all. But I can tell that they're really curious about my expression of what they're asking me to do. Because they're asking me to, because a lot of people, which is really interesting, I've just been looking on YouTube and stuff, but a lot of people that say, I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like myself. So
Right.
who do you feel like? Well, you do feel a bit different with a concussion. You are underwater. And everyone knows what it's like to feel like you're underwater. Not underwater that you can't breathe, underwater that you're just underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the sounds are top and down, muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really curious and really cool and really interesting.
There's mystery there.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery there. It can make you feel kind of vulnerable, because there's a whole group then of people that are saying that you're not doing it right yet. Like, you're not healed from your concussion yet. You still have symptoms. I still have symptoms of what they call is symptoms of the concussion. There's a lot of like too much excessive light can be make your eyes sore. So it's a curious, it's a very curious thing, but it's very fun as well to explore. What have I heard the other day? People talking about what is a brain?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just think of it like a brain is like, you know, if I was, I don't know what you call them. What do you call them? Taxidermist, or whatever. No, a coroner, no, or whatever. Anyway, if I took the body apart and then I pulled the brain out and I put it on a dish,
Yeah.
is the brain. That's the brain. And then I can take the liver out and then put that on a dish and go, this liver. So I don't know what people are going on about with the brain. Is there a brain? Or isn't there a brain? Is a brain?
I think some people, I think it's sort of an attempt to have a non woo woo groundedness or handhold even in the realm of talking about awareness, because awareness and consciousness, where does that exist? You can't put that on the table. And so when people say brain, they say, well, I know this brain appears to have something to do with what's arising in my perception and thought. So let's just say it's all the brain.
Oh, I see. Okay. That's what brain means. That's what they're talking about for the brain. Why they're talking about the brain.
I think so. I think it's just an attempt, for a to
Are people in the brain or are they in their heart?
see. Well, that resonates more for me personally. I feel more in my heart. I think people who say the brain might be more in their brain, but then they also would say that the heart is just an idea in the brain, according to them. So it's all just playing with words, and I know people who talk about the brain who do express love a lot. So who knows, Nickey? I feel like everybody just has their own words and.
But if you just think of the brain, like this was the liver and this was the brain, right? The actual, well, I've never seen the brain, but just on the telly. So
Right.
the brain, you know how the brain, it's got the wiggly lines.
Yeah.
And the liver. Well, this is an organ thing inside my body, and this is an organ thing inside my body. The liver does a what are you talking about, liver? Are you talking anything? I got any ideas, liver? No, nothing, liver? You're just livering? Okay, the brain has some. Okay, there's no superpower inside. There's nothing in here.
Yeah.
So, well, we don't have to call it a thought, a brain, and that.
What would you say is behind your thoughts?
I don't know what a thought is. I haven't figured that one out yet.
I heard. I'm probably not going to remember this as well as I would a few months ago. But there's this British quantum physicist named Sir Roger Penrose, and I saw this interview with him where he said that he has no idea, from a scientific perspective, he has no idea what awareness, consciousness, or the mind is. From a scientific perspective, he said science has no idea what any of that is. He did express a correlation between them that appears, which I don't remember, but like once you have one, you have the other. But he says he has no idea what any of them are.
Mm. Mm. Well, they say that they did like the neuro test or whatever, and it's like 6 seconds that you reach for the orange juice instead of the apple juice.
Right.
And say, oh, I chose the orange juice because I had apple juice yesterday.
Right.
So there's a delay. They're trying to sort of get that delay, but that delay is very frightening to the world as it is. That's why people don't go chatting about this everywhere, is because people would think, oh my goodness, what do you mean? And then there's that whole free will.
Yeah.
Can't take that away from me.
It's
I have to be responsible for my life, and if you take that away from me, it's like, well, I know, but really, it's so fresh. It's so fresh. You just have to walk into the fresh, naked. It's gonna be all right. You're all right. You're really all right. You are always all right.
Yeah. Yeah, the silence in the moment of silence in this conversation is just as all right as the moment of discussion.
Yeah. in between the words, in between the notes, in between, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed John Butler. Is it Butler?
Oh, I love him so much.
I
Yeah.
love him too. He's like the best Gramps. Be such a nice Gramps to have.
Oh yeah.
Hey Gramps. Um, and he always says, at the end of the day, it's in the silence.
I think my favorite video of his is just this moment where he's out in a field of grass and he's just talking about how his favorite thing in life is grass.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
it's this grass.
Yeah.
What more do you need?
I know. It's so true. It's the blueness of the sky. I always like, it's just so. And we have big skies in Canada. So, well, you put big skies there too.
Yeah.
Really big skies. It's just like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a funny phrase. Yeah, big sky. Big sky. There's a Kate Bush song called Big Sky.
Yeah, it's quite, yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard about Kate Bush in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I Yeah, and music has that freedom in it. Sometimes, like this past month, I'll listen to a Kate Bush song or any genre, classical song, a rap song, a rock song, and the music will have something in it that I'll just like the blueness of that sky, that it's an indescribable mystery, but it sets my heart on fire, and
Yeah.
with its simplicity, with its simple just being what it is. Like I like previously in years prior, I used to have this just insatiable thirst for music. And part of that might just be getting older or something, who knows? But I mean, all through my 20s and teen years and half of my, first part of my 30s, I was just constantly soaking in music and listening to new artists, new music, and making music. And now it's so, and if I heard one song, I would have to hear every song on that album and every other album by that artist, and then the live versions and the unreleased versions, and find out who their influences were and listen to their albums. And it was just this endless, beautiful, like zooming into the fractal, and you never get to the bottom, and you're soaking in all of it. And there's a beauty to that. It's like someone that wants to travel and has the money and, position where they could go to every city on earth, and they're never satisfied, but they just love the journey. But now what it feels like is I'll want to hear a song, and it's a 2-minute song, and I'll listen to it once, maybe twice, maybe a few times, and that's enough. It's like there's not this great desire for more. And I don't think that's better or worse than the way it used to be for me. And maybe it'll be like that again. I don't know. But that's just, it's like, but it makes me feel like when you see the sky, like here in Texas, it was snowing for the first time in years, and it was like too much snow. It was crazy. And like the whole state shut down, and it was scary. I think people are still recovering from this, and a lot of people really are suffering from it still, because yeah. But
that's right, because the lights went out.
Yeah, like we lost, like half the city lost its power here in Austin, and I lost.
Are you okay in your area?
Well, I lost my water, and there were some challenges for sure for me, but much bigger challenges for others. So I feel grateful, and my heart goes out to those who are. I just talked to a friend who her whole apartment apparently shut down permanently, and she had to move back with her parents because of this.
Wow.
Because of a week of cold winter, because Texas can't handle it. There's no.
It's very unusual.
Yeah, and but before it got crazy like that, just seeing all the snow, seeing the 6-8 inches of snow out my window, it was so beautiful. Just the white snow. And I mean, it's like it was so beautiful that what more could you ask for? It's just beautiful snow, beautiful icy branches, and I got to see my neighbors here in my apartment. I saw this like 2 and 3-year-old neighbor, this really sweet Indian family next to me, and I got to witness these children play with snowballs for the first time in their life, and just how
Fun.
it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm just sharing stories now, but
And I really am. It's really surprising how much people the emotion is attached to the weather, because that's a very common greeting talking, and then it's like the weather's weathering anyway. Like if you start having an emotion about it, it's like, oh, I can't believe it's raining. I thought the rain would hold up. If only the rain would have held up, I would have got to the market. Well, water is falling out of the sky. It's gonna grow your vegetables. The earth's doing earth. Like like it's spring coming up here now, and I just witnessed some crocuses coming up, little yellow crocuses. You wouldn't think, like, there's still snow around, little bits of snow around, but the crocuses are coming up. So it's not been 1 year for the big thing that happened. The seasons are just happening as they're happening. It's beautiful. The sun's coming up, the sun's going down, the water's coming in, the water's coming out. Like it's exactly like, yeah. As far as weather is, we're so arrogant, like such big heads to even speak about the weather and how it shouldn't be. Very inconvenient, Mr. Weather, Mrs. Weather. It's very inconvenient. Like, what are we talking about? It's weathering. It's neat. It's what's happening, Take a brolly. Always take a brolly, with you.
A brolly, that's an umbrella?
Yeah. Yeah, no. But people, yeah. People
And what are crocuses? I'm not familiar with that.
They're like one of the first little spring flowers that pop up in my area. Yeah, because in England, because like I said, it's gonna be my birthday in 2 weeks, right? First day of spring, and we used to have daffodils by the time it was my birthday. But I live in Canada now, and it's to be colder till about April-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. Up north there. Yeah, the spring is starting here for us at this point, or maybe in a week or two. Yeah, no, it's yeah. Yeah, what you were saying, it brought to mind, I want to read this UG Krishnamurti quote for a moment that I like. My phone, I could read it. Okay. It says, if I compared myself to a saint, it would be my tragedy. We don't belong to a common fraternity, a common brotherhood, or any such thing. What is it that is common to a rose, a daffodil, and a grass flower? Each one is uniquely beautiful in its own way. Each one has its own beauty. Whether you like it or not, that's another story.
Exactly. Oh, but we love to talk about the weather, and we love to have a moan about it, and it's perfectly fine. It's all right. As long as you're not really, really taking it on. It's like, yeah, because the weather's like, nature's watering can. Shh. I have to water this part of the bed, and then I have to water that bit, and then I have to drag the hose around to the side of the house. Whereas, it rains, and it's like, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I've never lived somewhere where it's rained all the time, and I'm not sure if I'm sure I'd be fine.
It doesn't rain all the time anywhere, really.
Well, right. Yeah, that's what I meant by that was Like, so I visited my friend in Portland who's been wanting me to move there for years. I visited him almost 3 years ago now, and but I visited in the spring, right when the rainy season was over. So it was 6 or 7 months of consistent rain, light rain mostly, and
Mm.
everything's gray. But then in the spring, it's like Portland and the whole Pacific Northwest. I think maybe it's like this Dr. Seuss novel of colors. It's like
Mm.
it's like once the sun comes out, all of this 6 months of rain allows for this incredible variety of like plant life that's was just so beautiful and so overwhelmingly colorful and just I think the word is fecund. It's this just life growing everywhere abundantly, and you could feel the energy of that in the city at that time of year. It's incredible. And yeah, it's all incredible. Like I imagine if I were to visit like Alaska when the sun doesn't go down for 6 months, or it's dark for however long it's dark, it in the desolate and the vast beauty of the ice and mountains. I mean, every area, everything has its own beauty, whether it's the ocean or the trees or the mountains or the volcano. Like which it's like UG was saying, like which one is more beautiful?
Yeah. How do you, yeah. It's just the eyes are seeing what's here to see. That's it. Like I don't have any mountains here, right here. I don't have any river right here, right? This, you know, I can walk to the river and then see the river. But sometimes in our conversations, we try and go all over the place, other than just where we sitting. It's exciting to talk about lots of places and things, but mostly it's just that we're sitting. It's just the pressure of the bottom on the chair, you know. The tasting of the tea. Ooh, a little bit cold, but good. Have you had your breakfast?
No, I no, not yet.
No. Okay. Well, let's do that.
Ha!
Let's have some breakfast. It was lovely, lovely talking to you, Art.
Lovely talking, Nikki, and I think you're right. It's time for some breakfast.
Let's have some breakfast. Let's
Let's
do
have some
it.
breakfast. Let's do it. Lovely.
Toast. Beans on toast.
Let It was lovely talking to you.
Thanks, Art. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and I'm really glad you're enjoying it. It's lovely. Oceans to oceans,
Ocean to ocean.
ocean to ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Where is it that the Atlantic and the Pacific meet? Oh, let me see. Oh no, no, no. Beautiful, beautiful. Love
You, you got it.
it. Thanks, Art.
Enjoy your breakfast.
All right. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye.